On this week's episode of Motivational Minutes, investigative crime reporter Steph Watts shares his mission for discovering the truth even in the face of unforeseen hidden dangers.
One of the exciting projects, if I can jump on, that I'm working on
Yeah.
now is with James Samuel, is a friend of mine that's developed an app based off of the Green Book, because
Hmm.
James is this highest level of intelligence within the U.S. government, fighter pilots, fought in Iraq, and was traveling with his wife in America in 2021 and was frightened, realized he was in a place that was not safe. And this is a man who's been to Iraq. So he's created this app that automatically records you when something happens. It stores it to a cloud. It alerts everybody of your location within your contacts that you've selected. So
Hmm.
now we're using this app to tell compelling stories, problematic stories of relationships with police. Not every story is negative.
Right.
We want to make sure that look, we know it's a problem, so yeah, so there's a area that, like, we're trying to advance. How do we look at this? We're going to go back to places like where Michael Brown was violently murdered on the streets, and look at, why does that racism exist? Look at, there's big billion-dollar companies there in the backyards, while African American people are paying the majority of the taxes in small towns like that. So yes, of course the prosecutor wouldn't bring charges against the cop that killed, Michael Brown,
Wow.
because they're
Yeah.
in bed with these big billion-dollar companies that aren't paying taxes in these areas, and they don't want attention. So let's
Hmm.
look at the root of the evil and figure out how. And you know what, Corey? It's not popular work. I'm not popular. It's not popular work.
Well,
It
yeah.
can make for things to be unsafe.
Yes, yes, and I'm so happy you set me up very easily with my next question with that transition because I was thinking earlier that in that line of work you're doing, you have to come in contact with potentially some very shady characters, potentially very dangerous people, people who don't want to be exposed, which, as you mentioned, could create a dangerous situation. So have you had any of those situations? And if you have, I would love to hear some of them or one of them or whatever you would like to share about them.
I'm thinking about it because there's some situations that would be problematic for me to even talk about.
Yeah.
But where I live now is a very safe place. But there was a bullet shot through my window right here.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, and that was involved in something that I'd rather not get into the whole
Yeah,
thing,
sure.
because
Of course.
it's
Of course.
pretty, it's still ongoing, and I had to have my apartment swept for bugs, and it was just like, I'm like, what is going on? But I mean, simplistically, um, probably a more that lighter example was the cult show I was talking about. For example, when I did in that cult show, I did a murder that happened within the Church of Scientology. A son was mentally ill, and he wasn't getting the proper treatment because they don't believe in that kind of.
Mm.
He was taking sand pills. He brutally murdered his mother. Brutally, it was a terrible murder, and the church fought to not um, have him, incarcerated, and they won, and he's in a mental institution. But I know, for example, there's a file on me within the Scientology church. I
Mm.
had to be careful where I stayed. In that same series, I did a murder within the Hells Angels biker gang. And I had to stay in hotels with different names. I find myself incredibly cautious. For example, my mom moved she never lived in an apartment. She moved to an apartment. And I went there and I said, "Mom, you've got to take your name off the door. Like, you can't have
Because people will
your name on the door,
research. Yeah.
even though this is a high security apartment." So I'm like, not trying to, not wanting to be paranoid, but yes, you need to be careful, especially in this day and age.
Mm.
You don't know what you're walking into in any situation. Um, so
Mm.
yeah, but I'm blessed to be able to do the work that I do. So I really don't want to get into that too much.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. I mean, Corey, and this, a lot of people take their hatred online. They'll
Mhm.
do and say anything they can about you, and it's horrible, and you have to be thick-skinned.
Yeah.
And I just laugh it off, but sometimes it gets personal.
Mhm.
And
And you never know when someone will go from, like, the internet to literally try to
right,
physically do
right,
something.
back to the situation here. I mean, my management company and said, someone's been calling about entries and exits into your apartment.
Mm.
And when I purchased this place, it was never on the market, so there's no electronic footprint. So I was like, well, who are they? And I had to let them know about what was going on. But it's like things like that. What do you mean someone's trying to find out how to get into my apartment?
Subscribe today for more inspiration on the go.